All right, so I did a video not too long ago that talked about Tacoma's economic boom, and one of the things I was going to do was a follow-up video that talks about the transit expansion that's going on right now in the area. A lot of the reason why parts of the region are not growing as fast is due to the lack of good transportation. Sure, you have the Sounder commuter train, which you'll see right here, but it doesn't do anything for you if you're going to try. Again, I apologize for the chickens that are here in the man cave because they're a little too young to be outside, and it's been snowing, obviously. So, but the Sounder doesn't help you because on the weekends there is no Sounder service. The Sounder is the commuter rail system, and so it actually helps take the load off of I-5, which runs from north to south in Seattle, and most of the population lives north and south along I-5. So the Sounder is great because it's using the old existing freight rail system that is running through the region, and Sound Transit, which is our transit agency here, rented that track to use it at certain times of the day. So anytime they want to expand service or add different hours or add more trains or anything like that, they have to communicate with the owner of the rail system or the rail track, which is a freight company. So this is basically talking about Tacoma's, or not Tacoma, but Seattle's Link Light Rail system. Now, prior to these colors that you see here, which they're saying future service, there was no colors. Okay, it's just basically called Central Link, and it really goes from at one point from Westlake to the airport, and even prior to that, it didn't even go all the way to the airport. It just went from Westlake down to a certain point and stopped. And then later on, I think in 2009, they opened up the airport station. So before that, they actually opened up the Tacoma Link, which was opened in 2003 down here in Tacoma. And even though they claim it's a light rail system, it technically is a streetcar. The vehicle itself is a streetcar. It's not something that you can couple, without really advanced modifications to it. Unlike what you see in Seattle, for example, that is a true light rail train. It's a bigger, heavier, stronger train than what you see here down in Tacoma, but they call it light rail because it is mostly separated from vehicle traffic, so it travels in its own lane, so they can call it light rail as opposed to a streetcar, which basically shares most of the traffic with cars. That's how they can get away with that. But this map is going to show you what's going to be in the future and what is currently in service right now. So right now, you will see the University of Washington down to Engle Lake. Now, I did a video that hasn't been posted yet, which actually goes down there by the airport. I had a job to do down there near SeaTac. And so I literally filmed the SeaTac area, which is right here where my mouse is. This is where it used to stop. The light rail line went from SeaTac up to Westlake, which is right here. So literally all of this section here is underground. Okay, and basically they were using an old transit tunnel that buses used, which is one of the very few in the country that uses the trolley buses, but also the buses used a bus-only terminal or tunnel, which traveled through downtown. Well, once they decided to actually go the route of having light rail, the light rail trains also share this tunnel. Now, soon it will be train only, and it's not going to be like it is today, where you have buses and trains that share the underground tunnel tube. Okay, so Westlake used to be as far north as you can go if you're coming from the south. Now it actually is 2 more stations that opened. Some of the videos that I've put out there show you the opening day of University of Washington Station and the Capitol Hill Station. They're both really, really nice. This actually lets you off right there by the Husky Stadium. So this is currently where it has stopped. Okay, they're working on this other section from here going up to Northgate. Now, Northgate is kind of where we used to live up in Seattle. We were kind of like in this area here where the mouse is. So Northgate is where they're actually tunneling up to now. And from Northgate down to the University of Washington, that's all paid for. So that nothing can happen to that. It's good to go. Okay. The other thing is that since University of Washington and Capitol Hill opened, they also opened up Engle Lake down here at the bottom. Okay, Engle Lake is important because prior to this, there was not a lot of places to park and take the train. Engle Lake and the airport obviously offer parking. You're not going to find parking in any other spot until you get up here to the University of Washington. And then there's areas that you can find where you can park, but there's no actual parking facility. Engle Lake, on the other hand, has a huge parking garage like what you see down here in Tacoma. Tacoma, at the Tacoma Dome, there's a huge area where you can park for free, and you can take the train, the Sounder train, up to Seattle. So I'm going to basically explain, I've talked about what is currently here. What's in kind of grayscaled out is what exists now. University of Washington, Capitol Hill, all of this is underground, okay? University of Washington, Capitol Hill, Westlake, University Street, Pioneer Square, and then the International District, Chinatown, is kind of where it becomes above ground. It still technically is kind of underground, but basically it's just an open, it's a what they call a cut, and they just basically cut into the earth and lay the track. Instead of actually covering it up like they do in many places, they just left it and built a station over top of it. So it is still technically considered underground. And then from there, it travels underground a little bit and gets to Stadium. And then the SoDo, which is where all of the, the Mariners and, of course, CenturyLink Field is there, all of that stuff. Okay, so that's there. And then it goes over to Beacon Hill, Mount Baker, Columbia City. These are places that we went, and I showed video of this, of when we were in that area. This is basically South Seattle. And then you have Othello and then Rainier Beach. Okay, then from there you have the Tukwila Station. Now, here is where a lot of people over in this area complain about having an at-grade light rail system. At grade means that it's on the street. It's still separated from traffic, meaning it has its own dedicated lanes, but it's at grade. So when the light changes, the train basically has the go, right? So it basically has advanced signaling so the train doesn't have to stop. The problem is that a lot of times people will turn, or there's traffic accidents or what have you as they're turning across the tracks. And if there's an accident that blocks the track, then there's a lot of delays. So this area here basically backs up the entire system because of this at-grade system. So knowing that, folks up in Ballard and Interbay and all of that don't want an at-grade station. They were wanting a underground tube type system. It's not going to happen. It's too expensive. And there's a lot of water issues, land and soil issues there. It just isn't going to make sense. So it's going to be an above ground system like what most of the other parts of the system is going to be. Okay, so Tukwila is there, then the SeaTac Airport Station, and then now the newly opened Engle Lake, which opened at the same time or a little bit later. It opened a little bit later, I think by a month or two after University of Washington and Capitol Hill. Okay, so that's the current system as of today. Okay, now what's going to be added within, now I'm talking between now and the year 2030. Okay, in the year between now and 2030. All right, between that point, Seattle is basically, or Sound Transit is trying to color code their system, because right now there really is no color coding. So what they're talking about, Everett, which is going to be well after 2030, So I think it's 2036. Everett is going to be the red line. So from Everett down to basically over here in West Seattle is going to be the red line. Now, what makes it interesting is the red line over in West Seattle, which is where Alki Beach is and all the cool stuff, that's going to be done before Everett. And you can kind of see why. It's a short line. There's only going to be like 3 stops along that line. And so it's a lot easier to do versus going all the way up to Everett. But Everett has a lot of things going for it, and there's a need for having, obviously, service up there. Traffic is bad up in this area. So what's being worked on today, as we speak right now, is Northgate, Roosevelt, and the U District Station. Now, it's confusing because the University of Washington and the U District are kind of the same thing, really. The University of Washington station is already done, and it's actually, I think, the prettiest of all the stations that Sound Transit has. And it's also the deepest one that we have. This is where the Husky Stadium is. The U District is more of the center of the university, right? So this is kind of where all the activity kind of is. And so that is going to be interesting there. Then you have Roosevelt, which is leaving the entire area. And then Northgate. This is where the shopping malls are. I did a video about some of the places to live in Seattle. And so I talked about Northgate. So this is where shopping and a lot of the medical facilities and things like that are. There's a wonderful, awesome Target, which I did a video there, excuse me, a long time ago about. So that is what's going on today. Okay, so this should be done in the next, I think, 5 years. Also, what's going on today is building the line all the way from downtown, which will basically connect the International District, all the way across to Bellevue. Okay, this is one of the ones where right in this section here is a floating bridge. Prior to this floating bridge, which was built in like early 2000s, I think it's 2009 or so. I can't remember, 2006 or 2009. Prior to that, a ferry would take people from here to here. Okay, so this side of town just didn't really grow that much. The floating bridge was built, and then you had a huge swell of population over here, obviously. So this is a concrete bridge that literally is floating on this lake. Okay, this is a huge lake. So Sound Transit is going to build, and it attracted national attention because it's going to build the longest floating train bridge. So this light rail line is going to be going across this actual lake on a floating bridge. It's actually using the HOV lanes that are on the bridge and probably adding a few more things to it, but it's basically going to connect the two using that. So instead of digging a subway tunnel, which would be extremely expensive, excuse me, they're going to basically put it on top of the floating bridge, and it's going to be a bi-directional type situation. So it's not going to be a single track. It's going to be a dual track system, which will be great. It's going to then connect over into Mercer Island and then over into South Bellevue, East Main, and then downtown Bellevue. Downtown Bellevue is, if you look at Bellevue as a city, it's a tiny city. There's not a lot of people in Bellevue when you look at population. But if you look at the skyline of Bellevue, it looks like you're in a massive, massive city. It looks kind of like South Lake Union with all of the new glass, tall buildings, 30 and 20 and 30-story buildings that are there. And it's really strange to be there because you'll see some of the old places from the 90s, these little 1- and 2-story shops, and then you have a huge high-rise that's been built. So you can see the city quickly changing over. And then from there, it goes all the way up to downtown Redmond, which all of this is going, this is basically Microsoft area, right? So this is what's being built right now. Now, of course, some of this is going to be built later. You got the Redmond Technology Center overlay, the Spring District, which there's a lot of talk about the Spring District, and it's a big development, a big to-do. So they really want to connect all of this to downtown because these two areas, Bellevue and Seattle, that is where all of the money, the technology, and the power of the area is. So that it makes a lot of sense. And also, if you have to drive from here to here, it sucks. I mean, and it has gotten worse over time, but it just literally sucks. You can go up and over and down, but it's still just as bad because then you face traffic from up here. Okay, so that is what's going on now. So basically, they have started over here in downtown Bellevue. They're digging a subway system for a short period. So I think basically downtown and East Main are, I believe, underground. And then from there, it comes up above ground all the way until it gets over here into the Chinatown district. And I think between Judkins Park and International District, I think it's going to be underground. Now, one of the things that has to happen for this to expand is they have to build a second tunnel. Because right here, the red and blue line, I think, are going to share the same tunnel system. Okay? The green line, which will be Ballard all the way down to Tacoma, which is going to be built much later, is going to be in a completely different tunnel, but you can connect between Westlake and this new tunnel, as well as the International District. Westlake and International District are the two main hubs for downtown. Okay? It just is. So what's interesting about this is that Ballard and Interbay, Smith Cove, all of those are really the hot places to live. It has been so for a while. A lot of development in these areas, and traffic is really, really bad. It's very dense in this area, so it makes sense to have a light rail system connecting this area here. Seattle Center, this is where you go to see the Space Needle and all of that cool stuff. It's where Key Arena is right now. Seattle is about to get a new hockey team, an NHL hockey team. We are the only city in the world right now that's being considered for a hockey team and been granted special permission. A lot of these folks that are behind this project has already submitted for a hockey team. And more than likely, it's going to be approved. The city has signed off on it. There's a developer redeveloping Key Arena. And it's a big developer that has done arenas all over the country. So it seems like it's a done deal. Given that, that puts an importance into having a light rail line that connects Seattle Center. Also, the developer of this is given, I think, some $20 million or $40 million, one of the two, for transit. So that will help, but that's a drop in the bucket compared to how much it's going to cost to build this entire system here. Just from the International District all the way up to Ballard, that tunnel is going to be very, very pricey. And that's the reason why they can't tunnel the rest of this, just because you're dealing with so much issues here. All of the heavy, tall, big buildings are right in this area. So then you come down in South Lake Union. This is Seattle country, or not Seattle, Amazon country right here. Denny, which is the Denny Triangle. You have a lot of development here. Also, South Lake, Amazon and South Lake Union kind of encroaching on this area. And then, of course, this is where you have the core of all the big buildings, right? This is the main part of downtown, right where this mouse is. So then Westlake, I don't know if that means Westlake has a Westlake 2.0 or not, or if that's just a walking part to it. Don't know what they're going to call that station there. And then you have a new station called Midtown, and then the same thing. International District is going to have another one, and then it goes down, and then it seems like a stop right there in Sodo. Okay, so then it's going to travel using the same existing track system that's already there. Now, this is going to cause a headache for some because, again, remember I said earlier, this area right in here is all at grade. So anytime there's an accident that blocks the tracks, then that's going to be a problem, right? But anyhow, there's going to be two new stations, it seems, South Graham Station and then South Boeing Access Road. And then it goes all the way down, and then the new line will be developed from Kent, Des Moines, so Kent, and then South 272nd Street. Some of this is a lot of manufacturing, job-based areas. Then Federal Way. And so this is where all of your parking is. If you notice the P, all of these are parking. If you look up here, there's nothing that says parking, right? There's really nothing that is parking in this area. So that is a problem. Now, this new station will have parking, so that's going to be great. But most of this, there's no parking except for Engle Lane. And, of course, the airport. So Federal Way, there's a huge transit center there. So it's going to be a stop there. And then South Federal Way, also parking available there. Then Fife, East Tacoma, and then down to the Tacoma Dome. Okay. Now, once this entire thing is built out, it's going to be about 122 miles long overall. All of the colors here, from the red to the blue to the green to the purple to the yellow or gold line, we're talking about 122 miles. Okay, so that's the equivalent of BART in San Francisco, or maybe it's a little bit bigger than BART in San Francisco. So that's the green line. Okay, the red line, which still kind of currently somewhat exists too, because if you count from SoDo up to the University of Washington, that already exists. I've already covered West Seattle, which is, they have 3 new stations that they're developing there. But basically, it is going to continue all the way up and run basically the length of the blue line. Okay. So some would argue that the red line is already what you currently see. And I think that does make sense because obviously the blue line's cutting off this way. So adding on to the red line would be from U District all the way up to Everett. Now, Everett, I want to talk about this. Everett's going to be the one that gets it somewhat last. I mean, Issaquah and stuff like that over here, it's, 2041, I believe, is when Issaquah finally gets their light rail line. But Everett gets it, I think, in 2038. This is all off the top of my head. I could be completely wrong. And I'll put it in the, as I'm going over this, I'll put in there when the line is expected to be done. But Everett is important because Everett has a lot of manufacturing. Okay. You have the industrial center here, and then, of course, you have Everett. There's a port and everything that Everett does. But Boeing is in this area, and it's a huge job market right here. The other thing is recently Everett, their airport, Payne Field, is now having commercial air service. So Alaska Airlines flies out of there, I believe Delta and maybe United, I can't remember. But it's a very small terminal that they're just now building, and it's already at capacity. And the building's not even done yet. And that's due to the fact that you cannot hardly add much more flights out of SeaTac. It's just at capacity. It's pretty much beyond capacity. They're trying to build and add on to it, but they're literally building a massive, massive terminal and international arrivals building. But it's going to take years for that to get done. So this is going to serve as a reliever airport. So this line will connect to that new airport, okay, or that new air terminal. But it's many, many years away. And a lot of people in this area is pretty upset about it. Linwood is where it is somewhat kind of guaranteed, but not really. And I say that because now the government is trying to back away from funding transit projects. And before, it was kind of certain that they would get the money for it. Now it's kind of like, we're not sure we're going to get the money. We do know that Sound Transit says they will get to Everett, but it may take a little bit longer because they have to get the money together. If the federal government does not pitch in, it's going to take a lot longer. They may have to do a couple of different adjustments, maybe not make the station so fancy. To me, when you go to Seattle, some of these stations are a little bit of a waste. A good example of this would be Capitol Hill Station. You have literally 3 or 4 different buildings to enter in on, and I never understood that. It's just a waste. Also, let me explain too, Capitol Hill is where you can get onto the front of the First Hill streetcar line. First Hill will take you down and over, and then you can get from there, it just stops, right? It goes down and all the way over into the Chinatown area, and then it literally comes up to about here, right? So about here is where it kind of stops, okay? And then you have South Lake Union, which kind of runs like this, and it stops right here. So it's disconnected, right? So the city has already approved Now this is through Seattle Department of Transportation. It's not through Sound Transit, so that's why you don't see it on here. You don't see the streetcar map for Seattle. But they basically approved the Broadway line, I believe it's called, or the extension, which will connect these two streetcar systems. And when they do that, you will now be able to go from literally from Capitol Hill all the way down to Chinatown and all the way up through places like Pike Place Market and all of the touristy areas, all the way into South Lake Union. And you can do that pretty easily once that's connected, and that should be done relatively soon. There's other extensions they're doing, but that is pretty much already in the bag, right? So the financing for that's pretty much there. So we've covered Everett. Bellevue, we already know that's going to be done. This purple line that you see here is many years away, 2041, I believe. So it's the last one on the list. Sammamish, I believe they didn't want to participate financially, so they were cut out of it. I think that's correct. I could be wrong, but I think that's correct. Okay. Now, here's the one that I'm more interested in because obviously I live down here. But if you notice this right here, this gray line is what currently exists, except for this part down. This is the Sounder commuter line, the big heavy train, which you saw in the last video I showed a picture of. All of this exists. So I didn't really talk much about it or mention it because literally it all exists. Currently it connects up to Everett. Literally from Everett to Seattle is one line, and they tell you it's the north line. And then from Seattle down to Lakewood is the south line, right? So those currently exist to this day. Because DuPont is becoming such a hotbed and it's growing really, really rapidly, it is going to get a connection. Also Telecom as well. Both of these areas offer parking, and so you're going to see Sounder service connect down into this area. Now, right over in here is literally Olympia. Olympia will probably never get Sounder service because, for one, there's no place to take the train into. The way they built Olympia and the lack of rail into that city, like there's no old tracks or anything that I know of, you can't really get on downtown on a train and then connect it in. Literally, I think the train line, the freight line goes around Olympia. So you would still have to drive far out from downtown and then get on. So I don't know if it would ever happen. I think a lot of folks there want it to happen because then it's an easier way to get up to Seattle, but it's a pretty good distance from here up to Seattle. So having a Sounder commuter train, even though it has limited service, would be better than what they have now, which is nothing. So this right here is pretty much going on right now, I believe. I think they're working on this. So here in Tacoma, before I talk about the Green Line a little bit more, here in Tacoma, currently the streetcar line, which is basically Tacoma Link, and they consider it light rail, goes from Tacoma Dome up to South 25th, Union Station, Convention Center, Commerce Street, and then it stops right here at the Theater District. Now, the reason why the Theater District is not grayscaled out is because it currently stops right here, let's say. So the station currently exists, but they're going to destroy that station and move it up. I don't know why, but they're going to. So they're saying that they're adding all of these extra stops. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're saying they're adding 7 stops, but technically it's really 6 because they're just moving this one up. Then Stadium Way, Stadium District, MLK in 3rd, MLK in 6th, MLK in 11th, and then it stops right here at 19th Street. Right here is nothing but hospitals. Okay, so this area here used to be pretty affordable housing. Not anymore. A lot of this is being just dug up with apartments and things like that. A lot of mid-rises are going up in this area. This is a hot area to live. Stadium District by itself was always hot. Over here is Point Defiance, to give you a point of reference. So the zoo, aquarium, all that, and the park is there. Point Ruston's right about here. And then, so this is kind of where the line is, okay? Right over in here, if you go from 6th Avenue over off of Division, this is the hot area of Tacoma, which is where you're going to have all the little bars and clubs, and they call it the Ballard of Tacoma. So it's a really cool, hot area. Now, this line here from Hilltop all the way up to Tacoma Community College, this is a long way. It looks short here, but that's a long distance, especially for a streetcar line. I think it's 7 miles, I believe. I can't remember exactly. I'll put that down in the at the bottom here, the exact distance. But this is not going to be done for a long time. I mean, I'll be a senior citizen by the time they connect this. I think I'll be in my 60s. I'm 40 now. Sorry. And so I'm going to be in my 60s by the time they finish this. But it's going to connect the community college all the way into downtown. Now, this line here should be done from Theater District to the 19th. Should be done within, I think, the next 7 years, 5 to 7 years. Again, I'll put that in the description or in the bottom here as well. So a lot of people are looking forward to this. A lot of developers have actually taken advantage of this. Now, here's the part that will make Tacoma explode even more. Is when Tacoma Dome is connected to Engle Lake. Now understand, Engle Lake is already built. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stops before Tacoma Dome, which is already built. Okay. Now they're going to build a new little deal here, probably, because Freight House Square, which is where they're talking about, is very tight. So all of this is going to be above ground. So it's basically a rail bridge. So all of this is a rail bridge. All of that's a rail bridge until you get here, and then it's all on the street. And then when you get into here, it's basically underground, right? Bellevue, they have their 2 little underground stations, and that's it. Everything else is typically going to be a rail bridge, okay, or at grade. But most of it's going to be just a bridge. So this is going to be interesting because once they actually build this, expect this area to explode. And I say this because right now, people, when you look at it, Federal Way, this is King County. So right, literally where this mouse is, this is Dash Point, which is where we were, which I did a video about that when we took the girls to the beach. So literally, Dash Point is split between King and Pierce. So it kind of runs like this, I guess. And so then it goes like that or whatever. So all of this is King County. Down here is Pierce. So all of this down here is Pierce. I don't know if Sumner is or not. But all of this is Pierce County. Okay. Once this actually gets developed, I expect this entire area's population to explode, especially Tacoma. It has the biggest opportunity to grow. It has the biggest areas to grow. And it's already on that path. And literally, you'll have trains connecting you to downtown Seattle constantly. Unlike the Sounder, which comes every so often, and it's hit and miss and spotty throughout the day, and there's no service on the weekend. Once Tacoma is connected, you're going to see a population explosion because you'll have trains 7 days a week, all the way up until 1 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know when service starts, maybe 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the morning the next day. You will have service connecting you all the way into Seattle. So this area will explode. It's the most affordable out of all of these other cities, and it has the most opportunity. Bellevue over here is going to explode too, but due to the cost to move in this area, even though they're getting the train system in sooner than most other areas, I think the cost is going to prohibit a lot of people. So yeah, it will grow, but a lot slower. Places like Issaquah and things like that, they're going to continue to grow, but it's getting extremely expensive over here. Anything over on this side of the lake is going to be pricey, including Mercer Island, extremely pricey. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Wanted to kind of talk about the future of the transportation system in the area, from the red line to the blue line, the green, the purple, and the, I guess, yellow or gold. Let me know what you think. And in case you're wondering, this right here is a bus rapid line, or bus rapid transit system that they're actually working to build. So then people who live in Burien can easily connect to the light rail system, but they also can go up to Bellevue really quick, and they can avoid all of this. So the idea is that the bus rapid would actually go pretty quickly and connect to all of these places, even places like Woodinville and stuff like that. This is all really nice areas up in here. So anyhow, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have any questions down below. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.